Our last review of the day is going to be for the film Captain America, the First Avenger. This movie, 14 years ago, this movie came out there, man. It's crazy to think about here. This was
Making
one
me
of the
feel old.
makes you feel old there, man. I mean, 2011 that this movie came out is one of the early movies. This was phase one of the MCU there for Marvel.
This
In
is when
this
we weren't sure it was going to work or not, like at all.
Yeah, this was when they were still doing the movies there and leading up to the Avengers, and people were like, "Man, there's no way the Avengers is ever gonna happen. There's no way you're gonna all these movies, solo movies are gonna be good enough for them to actually care about doing a big team up movie with the Avengers." But it did end up happening there. Before we got especially all these characters and all the multiverses and all this other stuff that is happening, you just had a lot of these simple origin stories kind of going on here. And one of them was Captain America, the First Avenger there. You had a dude from Brooklyn with a shield, with a frisbee there, throwing it around at Nazis there, shooting who that were shooting blue laser guns. You know what I mean? Simpler times back then for the Marvel universe. And that's the story here. It's the origin story is telling of Steve Rogers, who eventually becomes Captain America there. You see, this is during World War II. You see the height of what's going on here. This is fictional history there of what's going on with Nazis, especially the Nazi offshoot Hydra there, which is led by the villainous Red Skull, who's played by Hugo Weaving in this as well. So besides for Steve Rogers, played by Chris Evans in there, who we talked about a little bit before. Chris Evans, he was one of those actors who had played a lot of superhero roles there before finally cashing in with Captain America there. People might know he was in Scott Pilgrim there. He was one of the villainous evil X's there. He was also in which nobody probably remembers this. He was in The Losers, which was that Idris Elba movie there.
Well,
Uh,
definitely lost at the box office, that's for sure.
yeah, and then people also, I mean, he got a chance to return as Johnny Storm in Deadpool and Wolverine. The Human Torch in Fantastic Four. He was that. So, but he finally, hey, he was able to succeed there with this film. So, man, watching this film, it was like, man, it was kind of felt like a throwback. It was like, wow. I mean, to watch this over again. I would say it's not my favorite Captain America film. I still think The Winter Soldier is my favorite Captain American film, and just my favorite MCU film. Period. I do really love Captain America in the Winter Soldier quite a bit. So I will say that. Sage, what are your thoughts on Captain America: The First Avenger?
Well, I would agree about, I think, the second movie being better. And then, I mean, I think the third one is also one of the best films to come out of the MCU. So, you know, in a certain way, this is the weakest of the three, but I also don't want that to sound like I'm saying it's a weak movie either, right? I mean, I think this is actually quite strong. And, in hindsight, it is maybe slightly more distinctive because you've had multiple modern day kind of spy thriller films throughout the MCU. And this is the only like World War II period piece. So even though I do like those other two movies more, there is maybe like a slightly more distinct aesthetic and identity that this has that like nothing else quite has. So it is really unique on that level.
Mm, yeah. And there was talks with this movie, when it was coming out because it's set in World War II. It's like, what characters from Marvel history from World War II can we bring in there? Like, some rumors that Magneto was going to be in it because obviously of, Magneto's a Holocaust survivor. So maybe that was the thing, but they didn't own the rights to the X-Men at the time when they did this movie. I think there was also reports of maybe adding in some other kind of World War II characters in this as well there that they were possibly going to do which obviously didn't come to fruition. But they did have some, kind of characters there from that were related. Some other characters, most notably Howard Stark there. That's the father of Tony Stark, who in this is played by Dominic Cooper, who I think does a pretty good job as Howard Stark there, and then pretty good. And he would eventually return as that character in the show Peggy Carter there, which I did watch. I was one of the 50 people that actually watched that show, which was
I
Haley.
watched it too.
And that brings me to Haley Atwell, who's the love interest in this movie, who's Agent Peggy Carter in this. who's assisting the America there and fighting the Nazis there as well. Yeah, I mean Haley Atwell, I think really is really fun in this and really great. And I liked when she had her own show. It did end up getting canceled after like I think it was
On
like
a
2 seasons.
cliffhanger too.
Yeah, 2 seasons or so. I think it ended up getting
Yeah.
canceled there. I don't know where that fits in now in the whole timeline
They
and everything.
they kind of brought some plot elements back in like the late seasons of Agents of Shield. They started doing some like time travel stuff, and they kind of picked up a little bit of that series. Um, and then the Jarvis like Butler character from that show did make a very brief appearance in Endgame as well.
Yeah. So you did have that, but yeah. So I thought, I mean, Haley Atwell, I think is a good lead. I think she's got great personality there, and then you learn kind of throughout the kind of more of the history of the MCU and Shield that she was one of the founding members of Shield, along with her, and then the character in this Tommy Lee Jones, who he plays there,
Mhm.
who he plays. What's his character's name? Let's see, I can find it real quickly.
Colonel Phillips, I want to say, but
Yes,
he's got to be one of the best, just like truly one-off characters in the whole MCU. I mean, you've got a lot of these characters that come in and out and maybe have small appearances, and they kind of bring him back for fan service. But he never showed back up even the second time, and he made a lot with the screen time he had.
yeah, that is true there. Doesn't I think he shows up in What If? I think he shows up in that.
Is it voiced by Tommy Lee Jones though?
I don't think so. I don't think it's voiced by Tommy Lee.
He's too much of an angry melting candle to like want to come back and reprise that role.
Yeah, he kinda does like one of them dogs that's like 15 years old. You know what I mean? Like, uh, but but yeah, Tom Lee Jones, legendary actor there. He comes in and he's Chester Phillips, yeah, Colonel Chester Phillips. That he's in it. He does really great as well. So it was him. You learn it was kind of him, Peggy Carter, and also Howard Stark, who were kind of the founding members of Shield that kind of created Shield that eventually would get overrun by Hydra. There you kind of saw that. But yeah,
There's one big difference from the comics right there, because in the comics, Nick Fury was around during this stuff, and then he's like, there's like a serum that makes him semi-immortal, so that's why he's still around in present day, and so like you have him kind of playing this bigger role. But I mean, again, it's that comic book thing where it gets convoluted, and you want to pare it down and make it a little easier to understand for the kind of mainstream audience.
yeah. And you understand that with this, where he takes the super soldier serum, when he becomes Captain America, it's something that will also come up very frequently in a lot of the MCU of like them trying to replicate the experiment and test on
Yeah.
different people, and you see the
It
different
leads to
effects.
the Hulk.
Leads to the Hulk. It leads to that character. I forgot that character's name, but he was in Jessica Jones. He was like the guy that took the serum, but
Oh yeah,
I forgot his name there. I think it was like Patriot
Nuke.
something or Nuke. Okay, yeah, Nuke. Yeah, good memory there, Nuke. Yeah. So you had that
He's
character
a
there.
Daredevil villain in the comics.
Yeah, he ended up on Jessica Jones there, and then when he took it, he ended up like going crazy. It was like the effects, I guess, of taking steroids. It messed with his mind too much there. So there was that. So, and then there was
Yeah, but they
also
never quite got it right ever after the first Captain America transformations. Like every other time throughout history where they try to repeat it, it's like it's always wrong somehow. It's they never quite have the formula together. That's how you get, I mean, something like the Hulk, where it's like that was not the intended effect.
yeah. But it didn't they did kind of show the perfected formula because in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you see that the characters there, the villains, took the version of the
That's
same.
true. Yeah, in that show they kind of are like, hey, somebody finally figured it out. But I mean, it depends on which universe you want to go with, especially if you go with like the comics. I don't think it's ever been done exactly right. Again, I think in the show they wanted to create the suspense of Sam potentially taking it and whether he would choose it or reject it, which is an interesting story too. So I don't totally disagree with the decision, but there is a bit of a, hey, you made it sound like this was like impossible, and then hey, no, I know somebody figured it out all of a sudden.
Yeah, because Red Guardian has it. You have the Winter Soldier himself, Bucky, who's in the Sebastian Stan, who's not the Winter Soldier yet.
Isaiah Bradley.
Isaiah Bradley, who also had it there, who did it. So there's some success stories a little bit there you have with kind of the formula. They didn't, all turn out, like Abomination or, like yeah, Crazy Nuke or something like that. So it actually did work out for them. But, in this movie, it does a perfect example of why Steve Rogers is such the perfect guy to be Captain America, and the movie kinda lays that out, so well there, and you have the person who is the one who is looking the scientist, and they played by Stanley Tucci, who plays Erskine there, and as you mentioned, Tommy Lee Jones is a great kinda one-off character. I think that you also say that about Stanley Tucci, who comes in as Erskine, who ends up dying in this movie, but yeah,
It's
it's
one of the
Stanley.
most serious roles Stanley Tucci's probably ever had,
Oh,
just to
yeah.
be honest.
Oh, yeah, yeah, wasn't he the am I thinking about somebody? Wasn't he the serial killer in that movie, with Mark Wahlberg in it, where he killed his daughter or something? What was
Ooh,
that
I
movie?
don't know if I've seen that one.
I
I
think it
know
was
he was drunk Merlin in Transformers 5.
oh, yeah, he was one of the classic roles there, in
It's
there,
absolute classic.
yeah, I'm trying to think if he was that killer in Lovely Bones. I'm thinking about Mark because sometimes I confuse Mark Strong and Stanley Tucci. I don't know, both kind
They
of
do have a little bit of a similar look to him.
yeah, both racially ambiguous bald men, a little bit kinda going on. But Stanley Tucci, people remember, I mean, Devil Wears Prada is probably the big thing people will probably know him from, that there was that. And he was also in Spotlight. He was also in that film as well, which he also did a great job. Oh, and also he
Mm-hmm.
was the announcer in Hunger Games. He was the host of that, there.
I never saw any of this.
Oh, okay. It's one of the better YA films, I would say, is Hunger Games. It's one of the better ones. But he's also in that one as well. But and this is a clip for him there of where he's talking to Steve and explaining to him why he was picked, for the experiment there. You play.
Because a strong man who has known power all his life may lose respect for that power. But a weak man knows the value of strength and knows compassion.
Thanks. I think.
Whatever happens tomorrow, you must promise me one thing. That you will stay who you are. Not a perfect soldier, but a good man.
To the little guys.
Yeah.
No, wait.
I thought that was a great scene. And
Yeah,
he doesn't want him to drink because he doesn't want him to mess up with the experiment there. He says, "I can drink." I mean, you can't drink, but I can drink. He
like you
pulls
got
him.
surgery in the morning. You gotta fast.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, so I thought that was a great scene, and there's a lot of kind of great scenes of really with just storytelling of showing what kind of man Steve Rogers is. What'd you think about that in the movie?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think that's one of the best scenes. I think one of the other things that illustrates why he is the personality that deserves to have this process and deserves to be chosen for this thing is also it comes in Haley Atwell's performance because I mean you easily could have told a story where she's super into him after he's big and buff and more handsome, but there's this very clear chemistry that these characters have with each other when he's a little guy. Like she's like there is a value that she,
Oh, you cut out there.
you
Oh,
know, when oh, so did I cut out there?
yeah, you cut out. Just back up. You were saying she values him when he's the little motherfucker, and then you were saying
Yeah,
something.
she values him when he's not this impressive muscular guy. She values the way he thinks and the way he reacts to situations. And there's this kind of really great, dynamic and chemistry that the two characters develop before the experiment goes on at all. And I think that's illustrated really great at the very, very end of the movie when she, after he's, thought to be dead, she looks at the picture she's got of him that she keeps for herself, and it's of him before any of that stuff happened. It's him when he's little, and it kind of shows that like for how much ever he changed physically, he didn't really change internally in any way because the way that she thought of him that entire time was no different than how she saw him when they first met.
Yeah. And I think that scene was in the Peggy Carter show, like you mentioned, right, where she has the photo of him on her desk, or was it?
I think there's a moment of her looking at a picture of him at the right near the end of this movie. It's very brief, and then I think
Oh
that
yeah.
picture is used again in the show as well.
Okay, yeah. And the picture of him is not when he's the super soldier there. It's when he's the regular guy. And like you said, they got really great chemistry here between them. And it kind of reminded me, when the conversation gets brought up with a lot of these superhero movies, it's like you have these love interests in these movies, and you got two really attractive people, but they didn't got chemistry for shit. They
Yeah.
can't bounce off each other at all.
And this
Uh,
was right after the first Thor, which is a great example of the two lead characters having no chemistry whatsoever.
yeah, and this is a great scene that showcases the chemistry right here.
In that parking lot. Behind that diner.
Did you have something against running away?
You start running, they'll never let you stop. You stand up, you push back. Can't say no forever, right?
I know little of what that's like, to have every door shut in your face.
I guess I just don't know why you'd want to join the army if you were a beautiful dame. Or a woman. An agent, not a dame. You are beautiful, but
You have no idea how to talk to a woman, do you?
I think this is the longest conversation I've had with one. Women aren't exactly lining up to dance with the guy they might step on.
You must have danced.
Well, asking a woman to dance always seems so terrifying. In the past few years, just didn't seem to matter that much. Figured I'd wait.
For what?
Right partner.
And that's a great moment there, and obviously we know that's gonna come back later on in Avengers Endgame when they do finally get their dance there, which was a beautiful moment. I thought that was a great moment there in actually
Really
Endgame.
long-term payoff too. I also have to say that the effect of him, because Chris Evans was already a big bulky guy going into the movie, so of course it's like it's a double where they've kind of mixed the head onto the body of a smaller guy. I'm honestly surprised at how good that effect still looks all these years later.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna bring that up. Yeah, you see, because the contrast of Peggy Carter and him and how he's so kinda tiny there, and yeah, the effects still look really good, how they able to put his head on this kinda little, and they had an actual actor who was this guy that was the little guy there that was the skinny, scrawny person who they put Steve Rogers put Chris Evans' face on him to make him like that, and I
Oh,
still
the
think.
days when Marvel let their effects artists finish their work before the things came out.
Yeah. Ulysses said Captain America might be my favorite of the first wave of Marvel films there. So yeah, like I said, this was phased because it was Iron Man was the very first one.
Yep.
Um, and it was
Hulk was
Hulk.
second. Iron Man 2, then Thor, Captain America, then Avengers.
Yeah, so there was that. So out of that, Iron Man is still high up there for me with MCU films. Just what they did with
Yeah.
that one
I,
is
I,
very
I think the
impressive.
first Iron Man is great. My only criticism of that first Iron Man movie, and there's actually a deleted scene, which if they had left in the movie, I think would have fixed my problem with it. But my one criticism of that film is I think in the third act, the Obadiah Stane villain that Jeffrey, oh, what's his name now?
Oh,
Oh,
um, damn,
well,
Big Lebowski.
Obadiah Stane is the character's name anyway, but the
Yeah,
character that Obadiah Stane character, I feel like he goes
Jeff
from
Bridges.
corrupt Jeff Bridges. There we go. I feel like that character goes from like corrupt, terrible person, businessman to like zany, crazy, maniacal, laughing villain. I feel like that transition happens so fast in that movie where I'm like, this doesn't feel like the same villain that I was watching for almost the whole film. It's like the third act, he's just like, I'm getting in the big robot suit and I'm crazy now. Whereas I think that's one aspect of that where I think this first Captain America movie I think is actually a lot stronger. Is I think and part of it it's a little bit of a cheat, but I think if you do, and this goes for like Indiana Jones, right? For at least the first movie. But I think if your villain is a Nazi, you kind of have an excuse to make them one dimensional. And as long as the actor playing that villain is charismatic, I think you can get away with your villain being a little one dimensional. I think I think it's just a product of not seeing villains in stories. I think you can kind of get away with it with them. Usually it might be something I'd complain about, but I think Hugo Weaving, again with just the right amount of charisma, is able to play this, relatively one-dimensional villain with so much personality. And he's kind of the same level of crazy the entire movie, so there's not like this jump that I feel like there is in the first Iron Man. So I actually do think it is maybe it's one of the strongest villains, especially in that first round, first wave of Marvel films. I think.
Yeah. Hugo Weaving, yeah, who is Red Skull there. What do you think about the effects of Red Skull? Do you think it still holds up much like with the Steve Rogers?
Yeah, I mean it's mostly practical. At least it looks like it is to me. Maybe there's like a tiny bit of CG to make like the cheekbones move a little more, but I mean it looks really practical to me. And Hugo Weaving is he's just such a good actor that it's like despite all the makeup on his face, he's able to really act through all of it and make that personality come out. And like I said, he's a little one dimensional, but I think I don't know. It's a little bit of a cheat case where it's like I think you can kind of get away with that when it's a Nazi. I think it's okay to do that a little bit if you could just get the charisma part down.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Hugo Weaving, he's played some of the greatest villains. I mean, he played Agent Smith there, which was obviously an amazing villain there. So he's just a phenomenal actor all around. I mean, looking at him, he kind of looks like he reminds me of that the Red Orb from Devil May Cry. He's kind of remind me a little bit of that.
I,
But
I don't know if this happened to you, and I feel like I've spoken to a few people where I've heard them say this, but when I saw the first, I mean, I grew up reading all these comics. I knew who all these characters were before these movies ever came out, right? I don't think there's ever been a character I've been introduced to through the movies. I've always known who they were ahead of time. But in in that first Avengers movie, when you see Thanos in the post credit scene, somebody sitting directly behind me was like, "Oh man, that's the Red Skull."
see, I guess they don't know their colors, huh? That's like,
No, they don't.
yeah, because I mean, he's about as purple as you can get there.
Well, and
Um,
he's got a nose. I mean, that feels like a pretty defining feature too.
Maybe he's colorblind. I don't know. Maybe he just
Could be.
maybe he's colorblind. So yeah, maybe give him some slack on that one. Um, yeah, but so you have that, and then also who he's kind of mostly kind of his person he's palling around with there is Toby Jones in this. Who Toby Jones also is another really great actor there. And he's played he was Alfred Hitchcock in the better
Mhm.
Alfred Hitchcock movie because it was like two. There was one with Anthony Hopkins, which was more of like the glamorous Hollywood
Right.
portrait of Alfred Hitchcock. Like, hey, I'm just a kooky old man and I'm a good guy. And Toby Jones played Alfred Hitchcock. Like, no, this dude is like he's a fucking creep. He was a disgusting old man, I mean, yeah, I mean, he made Psycho, but he was kind of
Right.
fucked up. He was fucked up. So he kind of played him in the better kind of the two films there. And his character would also be coming back as there as a character. You say he is a person there as the hive mind, I guess you could say, of the Hydra there, the living computer in Winter Soldier.
Yeah. Yeah, he's in the comics this character was what was that? If I mentioned
Uh
the crazy German sci-fi tech in this film was based on actually silly German design ideas. That's true. That's true. There was actually a lot of like like the Nazis were idiots when it came to engineering, and so like you can research into it. There's a lot of like there's a big during the montage in the middle of the movie. There's a scene where Captain America like throws a grenade into a tank that's like 40 stories tall, and that's like a real blueprint that like they actually drew up and were like we could make this and it'll work, and of course it didn't because they were morons. Um, but the Arnim Zola character in the comics, the Arnim Zola character is like it's like a robot that walks around with like a Teletubby TV on its stomach with his face sticking out all the time. So they did a really good
like the
job of
character
making
from
that
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something.
kinda,
Crank,
except
Crank,
yeah,
Crank.
well, except instead of an alien, it was like a Teletubby TV. But like I thought that was a character that they like adapted and made far better, honestly, in the adaptation than even in the source material.
Oh, yeah. So I thought that was really good, and then you see that basically his character, I mean, they're obviously Hydra is kind of a part of the Nazi party there, and that his character of Red Skull is more into the occult stuff there. That obviously that was
Mhm.
heavily a thing about the Nazis into, a lot of magic and occult type things and all that type of stuff there. But he was kind of you see that he was a very true believer of this, and you see also with this, because Stanley Tucci's character escaped there from what was going on to come to America to help them in their effort to fight the Nazis, and that Red Skull was one of the first people to have the super soldier serum and experiment and all that. That's why you see that he was one of the people that got messed up with it, and it increasingly heavily damaged, and why he, can take his face off there, like Face Off.
Right. Take
Um
his face off.
You got that. So he was kind of one of the first recipients of it, so they didn't quite perfect it quite yet of the serum there. So I thought that was good. With that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, if you research all about that stuff there and get into all the crazy things that they thought about and believed and all the kind of research they went into all that they can give you. So that, great for you listeners for bringing that up there about that. So they actually did that. Um and yeah, I mean, with, the Captain America character, like I said, constantly, making you really root for him and wanna see him succeed. I think they do a really great job at that. I mean, so many, just the first half of this movie, I think it's kinda like, I don't know, I'm gonna compare, maybe this is another war movie. It's gonna be, I probably there's never a time in history people have compared both these things in history, but, like, how, like, you watch Full Metal Jacket and you think like, well, the first half of this movie is way better than probably the second half of it. Like, when they're
Sure.
in basic training there, that's, like, the best part of the movie compared to the other half, and I kinda feel like, do you feel like a little bit with Captain America: First Avenger, like, before he really gets the serum and do all that, that's kinda like the better part of the movie, or you think?
For me, I'd say I like the first act and the third act equally. And I think it's the second act in the middle where there's a bit of a lull. And for me, I think what it is that there is so much of, I mean, it's like years and years and years of them being at war and them, the Howling Commandos being this like a group of soldiers together that is kind of skipped over in a montage. And I mean, cool action shots, certainly.
Yeah.
There's some really cool cinematography and the way things are visualized. I do think is good, but I do wish that. I mean, what this movie's probably already what 2.5 hours long or something like that. But part of me wishes it could be a little longer, just so that that middle section could be less montagey. Because to me, that's the weakest part is that there's so much potential that you could have in like really spending time in the midst of the battles and really digging into each of the. I mean, and that's one product of it being a cinematic universe is like, well, by the end of this first movie we got to have him ready to be in present day in the Avengers. Whereas like, just hypothetically, let's say if this had just been its own standalone film, not meant to connect to anything, we might have spent 2 or 3 movies all in this World War II period. So that's it's I think it's maybe it's a drawback of needing to connect into a larger universe. It doesn't I don't think it takes too much away from the film for me. I still think I still overall really, really like it. And I think the third act is way stronger than the second act. I think the third act kind of brings it back around to me to be just as good as the first act was. But it does make me at least wish that I could have spent more time in the middle of everything.
Mm. Yeah. Like, it's just kinda like I played a little bit of the montage where he's with the Howling Commandos there, and some of these are famous characters there from the Howling Commandos they had. You have Derek Luke who's in this, who plays Gabe Jones in this, who I think is one of the first, black characters they ever had in Marvel Comics.
He
Uh,
was, yeah,
Derek
very
Luke there.
part of the original run, where again, which is the original Howling Commandos. It was Nick Fury, kind of the David Hasselhoff, salt and pepper, white Nick Fury back in the day, and that was one of the original Howling Commandos alongside him, along with like Dum Dum Dugan was also a big character who he gets a little screen time in this movie, pops back up in the Agent Carter show as well. I think that's probably one of the thing I would maybe have wanted to see fleshed out more if there had just been more time. Would have been the Howling Commandos as like a whole group of soldiers. You know.
Yeah. And you seen the Peggy Carter show with, she kinda takes over as the leader a little bit of the Howling Commandos, a little bit you find out there.
Yeah.
Um
Unfortunately, you only really get screen time for like 1 or 2 of them. You don't really get to see like the group as a whole in that show. So they do a little bit more, but it's maybe still not what you might have wanted from the, you know.
Yeah. So you have, yeah, Derek Luke, Gabe Jones there. You mentioned Dum Dum Dugan there, Neil McDonough who plays him. Neil McDonough, he's been in things like Justified. He was in season 4. He has a great run on that show in Justified. I love that season.
Oh yeah.
He's really great. Derek Luke, he was in things like Antoine Fisher before. He was in Friday Night Lights. If people seen the movie version, not the TV show. He was in that there. He was also in The Americans for a bit. I don't know if you remember him in that.
I do remember him in that.
Yeah,
He
he
was
was
very
good.
good at it.
he had a good little stint in that. You also had Kenneth Chow there who plays as Jim Morita there, who's the Japanese person there, part of the team. And his character actually, his ancestor, I mean, his great great grandchild appears in Spider Man. No Way, I mean, what was it? Homecoming, as the principal of
Mhm.
Peter's school.
Yeah.
So, and you see like in his office, there's a picture of his, his ancestor there in his office. So it's like, okay, that was so they'll kind of bring it around. They'll do some stuff like that sometimes.
And
Which
in the Agents of Shield series, they had Gabe Jones. I don't know if it was supposed to be his grandson or great grandson, but
yeah,
he was like a
grandson.
major part of the cast for like 2 solid seasons of that series.
Oh, yes, I do remember that, and he had even some of his tech. There was an episode where he used some of his old Howland Commando tech, there. So that was kinda cool, so with that there. So yeah, I wish,
And
you
actually, I believe he's going to be one of the 4 playable characters in that Rise of Hydra 1984 game that Amy Hennig is working on right now.
oh, cool. Okay, that'd be really nice. And, to compare it to another kinda World War movie, superhero movie we got, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman kinda you spend more time with the team, I feel like, in that, and
Yeah,
her with the with
a
the
little
her
bit for sure.
with her team, and she has, like, a big no man's land sequence there of, like, you really feel the battle. You really feel the
Yeah.
impact of World War One, and that was World War One, not World War Two. You really feel the impact of that. Yeah, what do you think about that a little bit there? You feel like that?
I totally agree with you. I think that movie has a better second act, but I definitely don't think it has as good of a third act.
That third act is pretty bad. That kind of drags the movie down a lot. Is the third act of there where it's like turns into CGI super battle, and it's like what the fuck?
It gets to be
Ah,
a little too much. But I do think that second act, the first 2 acts of that movie, I mean, and that no man's land scene, as you just, I mean, that's iconic, honestly. I mean, that's going to be hard to beat as far as putting that character to film in the future, I think.
yeah, that's a great scene. Yeah, Patty Jenkins did a great job with that, and she,
And then
I
she was like, "Hey, what if Wonder Woman was a rapist in the next movie?"
Yeah, so she got a little, away from the plot with the other one, but she still got the first Wonder Woman, which I do love a lot. There's
Exactly.
that, but yeah, so I wish they kinda did more, yeah, with the team, with the Howling Commandos there, with that, and then also you see, yeah, Captain America. In Iron Man, he killed people too, so it's not like this is the first time a hero
Oh
killed.
yeah,
He killed people there
yeah.
too. I was gonna say like,
That's
yeah,
actually something unique, I think, about the MCU is not because a lot of people call attention to the fact that they didn't really do so much with like secret identities in these movies, even though that's like such a big part of like pretty much all these same characters in the comic versions. But they all kill people. Iron Man kills people. The second movie's the Hulk. Hulk is definitely killing people.
yeah.
Thor is like he's like a god in a Viking war. He's definitely killing people in that movie. And Captain America is definitely just straight up shooting people. I mean, he's killing Nazis in the world. So like it's funny like to think of like a team of superheroes. And then I mean Hawkeye and Black Widow are like super spies and like assassins and stuff. Everyone in the first Avengers movie is like a murderer superhero.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, at least so yeah, everyone's pretty much a murderer there, but hey, so you got that kind of going on with it. And yeah, I mean, you see in like what again, the movie does a great job at leading it up to of why he would make such a great person. Because you see, I mean, the serum not only improves his body there, but improves his mind. But you also had a really good mind as well in this sequence right here, already where he's in basic training there. In this
Means we're only at the halfway point. First man to bring it to me gets a ride back with Agent Carter. Move, move! Come on, get up there! That's all you got. This army's in trouble. Get up there, Hawk. Come on, get up there! Nobody's got that flag in 17 years. Now fall back in the line. Come on, fall in. Let's go. Get back into formation. Rogers! I said fall in!
Now, what do you think? You think you would have done that, or you think you would have tried to climb the pole there?
I mean, it's definitely like the smart ass way to handle the situation, which is why I like it. But I wonder if really on your ass drill sergeant would have accepted that, or it would have been like, no, 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 you put it back up and you climb. I don't know. I could see it going
Huh.
either way.
Yeah, because I think yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's technically cheating or something like that. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, but why didn't they just think, just like unattaching it? Yeah, I mean, you
I
could say
mean,
that.
they are grunts and they're not exactly creative. So I mean, it does, I mean, if you're going to be like this really great legendary soldier on the fly problem solving, it should be a quality that you've got.
Yeah. So, yeah. So he just takes the part there. So you see that with that sequence there, and how it establishes that kind of I know this came into question about what is the ideology of Captain America. What does Captain America kind of represent there, and the question kind of gets brought to him of why do you want to take on the Nazis? Like, what's your big thing against them? Do you want to kill them? Do you hate them? And he's like, well, the main thing is this. He's like, I just don't like bullies. I don't like people like that. And so, I know that came into question with Anthony Mackie, about what he kinda brought up there. What do you think about that than just, Captain America? Do you think his ideology is kinda fleshed out here well?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they do a good job of it here. I mean, it's a pretty simple moral fable, but it's to me, it's very true to the character. The character, I mean, that's the reason that there are comic books like Civil War from like 2005 in the first place for them to make these movies on. The whole thing was, it's always been, I think, that this character is not necessarily a government mascot, but more about an idealization for America to reach forward for. It's less about what America is and what America should be. And to me, that's always been what this character is about. And I mean that goes across many comic books. Like I said, the Civil War comic, it's all about how the government comes in and goes like, all right, we need every superhero to give up their secret identity. And he's like, hey, hold on, that's gonna like put a lot of people's lives in danger. Let's hold off. This is government overreach. And I mean, it is very fast in that comic, faster than it is in the movie. In the movie, it actually is a little slower the build up. In the comic, he jumps out of a shield helicarrier in like the first 10 pages.
Mm, yeah. And like this is a great scene. So the before I play this scene right here, but so this was the comment from Anthony Mackie here. It's a little bit older now, but so this is from Variety. It says Captain America: Brave New World director says things get misinterpreted after Anthony Mackie's America comment ignited right wing outrage. There it says. Um, so the actor ignited right-wing outrage last month during a Q&A in which he said Captain America represents a lot of different things. I don't think the term America should be one of those representations. It's about a man who keeps his word, who has honor, dignity, and integrity. Mackie added at the time, someone who is trustworthy and dependable. And then it says some right-wing pundits felt Mackie was downplaying the patriotism of the superhero, while others thought he was being downright anti-American. The controversy grew loud enough that Mackie took to Instagram a few days later to clarify his remarks there. And then that's when he said, "Let me be clear about this. I'm a proud American, and taking on the shield of a hero like Cap is an honor of a lifetime." Mackie wrote, "I have the utmost respect for those who have served and who serve and have served our country. Cap has universal characteristics that people all over the world can relate to." Is what he was there. So I mean, I get it. I mean, he was saying that, like, I mean, Captain America has his own kind of ideals in there, and kind of what America strives to be there, and not what it isn't, and what it constantly strives to be there. So I pretty much got what he kind of understood what he was
Yeah.
saying there with that
It,
statement.
to me, it sounds like he completely understands what the character is and always has been. And it is the most non-controversial statement I feel like you could make about this character.
Yeah, because I mean, his ideals, Captain America's ideals aren't based on America. They're based on, like you were saying, of him and his own direct moral code and
Yeah.
and his own kind of moral compass, not
If
America.
if anything, the American government should look up to him. Like that's all almost to me what the point is.
Yeah. And this is a great sequence here, which also is another classic line that we would hear come back later on here, and they do even a fun spoof on it later on in like something like I think in game they do a fun spoof.
Get on with it. Hey, just start the cartoon.
Hey, you want to shut up?
Together with allied forces, we'll face any threat, no matter the size.
You just don't know when to give up, do you?
I can do this all day.
Hey, pick on
Uh,
somebody your own size.
dang, kicked him in his damn, kicked him in his mouth.
Right in the ass. I do want to mention too, like I think what a better interpretation of Bucky this is than the original comics, because in
Mm,
the old comics, Bucky was kind of just a ripoff of Robin. It
mm,
wasn't until I don't know exactly what year it came out. I want to say it was in the 80s, but it wasn't until Ed Brubaker did the Winter Soldier run where Bucky came back as the Winter Soldier character that character really felt like it was more interesting. In the original run, it was like Bucky was just Robin. It was literally just Robin, but less creative. So that's something I was like thrilled to see them change and make him almost feel like more like the big brother
mm.
too in the film.
Yeah. And you see, yeah, in this, the dynamic has kind of changed there. So Bucky's kind of like the super soldier. He's the good Joe there. He's the one going off to war, something that Steve Rogers wants to do, as he, like you said, opposed to when they had the comics, where he's kind of like this, boy sidekick to Captain America there. Bucky was, and which I thought so. And then you see kind of later in the movie, he does do the whole transformation there. You get to see where he does become, finally gets to join the fight, be in the war, and become Captain America there. But not at first. You see that he kind of goes through. At first, it's like, well, you're just kind of a science experiment, and we're kind of just going to parade you around there. But this scene, and this is where all the women went crazy, and some men there went crazy there over this sequence
Oh
there.
yeah, I know.
Where
There's a lot of people that were for this.
we had Chris Evans there, and I remember somebody called him an inverted Dorito. I mean, like big shoulders there, kind of skinny waist. You kind of got going on there, and yeah, I mean, he worked out a lot for this role. I mean, he did the whole Marvel diet there,
And then they
and
told him you have to do this for 15 years.
I mean, I don't know if it's worth it. I mean, probably that check is worth it. Maybe there, maybe
The
yeah,
check is probably. I think it's definitely worth it.
yeah, work it there. But yeah, you see, we kind of makes the transformation, and then what happens after that is, like I said, I mean, it's like he finally wants to join the fight. It's like, hey, I finally am physically strong enough, but he gets reduced to doing this.
I can do this. Nothing to it. Sell a few bonds, bonds buy bullets, bullets kill Nazis. Bing, bang, boom. You're an American hero. It's just not how I pictured getting there. The senator's got a lot of pull up on the hill. If you play ball with us, you'll be leading your own platoon in no time. Take the shield. Go.
Starts doing show tunes there. You see there. And do you like the whole?
I love this. I love this whole thing actually because it's for two reasons. One, I think it is a great insight into how propaganda was produced in its time. And two, I think it is one of the like the reveal of that just being what he's doing. Especially, I remember seeing it in the theater and seeing that for the first time. I think that's one of the best, still to this day, that any of these movies has ever worked in like the cheesy comic accurate costume for like a sequence. Because they'll do that, and it'll be a joke a lot of the time, and then this definitely is. It's meant to be kind of funny. That it's like, oh, this is how they're going to do that. Um, but I think it catches you off guard. And it was kind of the first time they did that like super cheesy comic accurate costume. And then there's this layer of like, oh, this is very how propaganda was produced and filmed and staged at the time that it was being made. So I think it serves a couple purposes, but I think it's a really great sequence.
Yeah. Which I mean, the comics during World War II hit a. I mean, it was a boom. I mean, a lot of Joes were
Yeah,
buying comics there, reading them. There's an infamous comic cover there. I mean, not political at all. Captain America punching Adolf Hitler
yeah,
there.
not political whatsoever. Keep your politics out of my Captain America.
Not political at all. That's an infamous cover that people have there, and that was huge. That was a big thing there. So, and then yeah, I mean, Captain America was used as a tool there for propaganda, to help
Oh, absolutely.
morale, and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, I think it works like you said best out of like I was gonna bring that up with the whole like these movies will toss like a nostalgia thing to people who've read the comics. Like, hey, we'll throw in the classic costume that the character wore. Um, they did that recently in the Thor movie, Thor: Love and Thunder. There's a quick sequence where he's actually wearing the classic Thor costume there that we know.
That had no impact.
Didn't have an impact there. It was just a quick, like, little scene where he's running, and then you see all the different costumes there. Didn't really have much of an impact. But yeah, there was that, and yeah, so they'll do that a bunch. It's become like a trope in superhero movies. Like they're gonna try on their classic costume and
Did
everything.
this start that trope in terms of like,
Uh,
hey, we're gonna have like a different modern costume, but we'll throw something in as a callback? Was this the first time that happened?
I mean, this probably doesn't count. I remember in the Hulk where he holds up like he's got the purple
Oh,
stretchy thing, but he doesn't actually
true.
put him on.
That comes back, and he's actually wearing those in later movies. So, does that count as foreshadowing or an Easter egg? I don't even
We have foreshadowing the purple shorts there, so maybe that I don't know. Maybe some people might count that there, for that. Iron Man, I don't think the. I mean,
the Mark One suit is it's like there is a Mark One suit in the comics, but it's its own movie version of the Mark One suit. It's not really the same thing.
yeah, and then Thor, like even the first Thor, I don't think they do like a retro
No,
look.
and in the first Thor movie, he has the J. Michael Straczynski Thor kind of relaunch costume just right away.
Mm, yeah, so I mean, maybe this was one of the first ones to really kind of throw that out there and really do it like this. It's really good there, and that's where finally, he learns that Bucky and his soldiers are there behind enemy lines, and that's when he goes and he finally, takes up action and rescues them, and then becomes the legend Captain America. And that's when he gets into the whole montage that I played there, with this, where he starts the legacy of becoming there and starts to do all these missions and prove himself. Um,
And I think that's a really, really damn good costume. I think that's still one of the best costumes in a superhero movie. How they translated that into a World War II actual like soldier's uniform. I really I think it's to this day one of the best ones they've ever done.
Yeah, because I think they actually combined it like a paratrooper, with the strap on the helmet, which looks really good. I think that, yeah, it is a very kind of strong costume, one of the strongest ones they ever done. I hate his Avengers costume. I hate that one. That one I do not.
I think the one in the Avengers movie looks. I think it looks better in like I don't know. It's probably only the last 20 minutes of the movie, but once the cowl gets torn off and he's only wearing it from the neck down, then I think that costume doesn't look bad. But the helmet and the weird, goofy, like stretched out like fabric that goes like connects up to the helmet, that I think is what looks really bad in that movie.
Yeah, let me see a little
Because
bit here.
there's the kind of near the end, he gets it like ripped off, and then there's for the good chunk of the movie, it's just the neck down, and I think that looks okay. But it's whenever he's got that mask on, I think is where it looks bad.
Yeah, he looks goofy as hell with the mask on. He looks yeah. I remember the scene you're talking about, like when the mask comes off. It looks a lot better there with the
Yeah,
kind of
I
mask.
think that's really what hurts it is the cowl.
Yeah. But then I like the Winter Soldier one. I like a lot too. I like the
Yeah, yeah, that feels like a true like spy uniform. And hell, even in that movie, he like breaks into the museum and kind of steals his, soldier's uniform again at one point. So even for kind of the big end finale of that movie, they go back to this first costume again.
yeah. So he kind of it's like a mix. He keeps kind of the helmet from First Avenger, but it's kind of like more of a modernized kind of like cargo pants plus like kind of a bodysuit there with that armor suit at the top. So yeah,
Yeah,
I think
that looks really good.
yeah, that looks good. I think that's the best one for me is when he's wearing that one. That's the good one there. So that's a good costume. And then it's kind of a more darker, muted one in like Infinity War. They do kind of more darker one there.
Well, in that one, it's supposed to be the like he's been on the run for 3 years or something like that. So it's all dirty and like run down and kind of almost kind of ruined as the suit. So it's like super super scuffed up.
Yeah, this one right here. It's kind of got like that's supposed to be like
That's basically a dirty version of the suit he wears in Age of Ultron.
mm, yeah. So yeah. Like I think in this point he's I mean they don't say it, but he's supposed to be like what nomad at this point, like kind of that character.
Yeah, yeah, that's what that kind of stage of that character was called in the comics. They definitely don't use the word nomad in the movie, but if you've read the books, you know what it is.
Yeah. So yeah, you got that. Yeah. I mean, it was fun watching this again. I mean, just to see it. It's been a minute since I've seen it. I used to sometimes do rewatches, like, anytime a new Marvel movie, I used to kinda go back and watch, but now there's so many of them, I can't rewatch all those fucking there's so many of them now, like, bro, I can't watch all these, like,
You'd,
leading up.
you'd miss the release of the movie if you did it now.
Yeah, so there's just so many of these, but, I mean, like I said, I mean, it still has that charm, there of, like you said, very early on to the universe before we got all these shows, 50 shows and 30, 100 movies and all this other stuff. Like, it was like, hey, this was more of a simpler time there of this before all the things had to connect into each other and all the multiverses and everything like that. It was just, hey, it was guy from Brooklyn, you know what I mean, with a shield there, and that
And
was
it
it.
was a time when these movies were good.
Yeah, there's sometimes they'll still do some good ones every now and again. It just is harder to recommend them a little bit more, I would kinda say with that one.
Yeah.
Any big downsides with you for this movie?
I mean, I kind of said it already, but yeah, I think I wish I almost wish it was like 20 minutes to maybe a half hour longer, and I know that would make this like just such a long movie, but I do wish that the kind of war scenes could have just been fleshed out more. Other than that, that's kind of my only really significant critique of it. Otherwise, I mean, I think the personality of this character is captured really well. I mean, growing up with this character way before there ever was even a discussion about like a movie to this caliber, knowing the origin story, I remember seeing this in theaters and thinking, wow, they nailed it. They did like pretty much everything I'd want to see in like a first Captain America movie. I think they knocked it out of the park. The supporting cast is great. Chris Evans, I think, really embodies the character. They do an amazing job with the costume and selling that in live action. And even though I think the second act dips a little bit, I think the third act is really strong, and I think it comes back and finishes really, really well. So yeah, no, I mean, I'd say I'd give this a peek.
Mm. Do you think the ending, some people brought up and this gets brought up in Endgame of like, well, you coulda just jumped out the plane and you know what I mean, and did that. Do you think he needed to guide the plane down there?
I definitely think it's a funny joke. It's like a comment for other characters to make and for him to have that moment. But at the end of the day, I think it's the kind of thing where there was just no way he was going to take the chance on not being in complete control of making sure that those bombs didn't get dropped. So like, yeah, maybe logically there might be a way that he could have done that, but I still just I think in the moment, somebody that is so willing to self-sacrifice and is so just always kind of putting everyone else first. I think in his mind, there's no way that he wasn't going to just take it as far as he could and make absolutely sure that he did what he needed to do.
Mm, okay, yeah. And that was a good moment. He says goodbye to Peggy there at the end. That was a kind of great moment there. Like I said, it's kind of one of these movies, one of the rare time they actually the love interest like they feel, like they have some chemistry and they're really good. And where the Carter character goes, like I said, I did like the show she did. She was a big factor in the what if thing. I know some people are annoyed by that they kind of. I mean, even though I
Her
like.
scenes in Winter Soldier are really good, even though they're very brief.
Oh, yeah, and they did some great effects there where they actually had Haley Atwell, she was just under, like, kinda digital effects plus makeup where they put her under where she made her look like kind of an elderly woman. I thought that was a great scene where she's an elderly woman's got dementia. I thought that was an amazing scene there. And then when he goes to visit the museum and then of himself, and then he actually sees, her giving interviews about him and talking about, the experiences that she had. That's a great sequence as well there. She gets brought back up in that. That's also really good and really well done. Now the love interest there where it was, kind of Peggy Carter's was her niece. Um,
Yeah, that was weird, but it was weird in the comics, and so I don't totally blame the movie for that being weird. I just maybe they could have just not done that.
yeah, so that went nowhere. After that movie, that went absolutely nowhere.
In the comics, she's identical, and she's like actually his love interest in modern day, in like some modern day comics, where it's like
Um,
she's literally just Peggy Carter again. It's like same personality, same she looks identical, and it's just like here's just an excuse to have this character around, kind of. But
okay.
in certain ways, it almost felt weirder in the movie, maybe because she was so clearly a different person and looked different and everything, and so it maybe made it almost creepier.
Mm. He said, "I'm gonna find a way to work myself into this family, one way or another." But I mean, he didn't know that. He didn't know that she was her niece at the time. Yeah, I
No,
think.
and he knew in the comics.
Oh, okay. So that is a little bit more weirder that he knew it for,
Yeah.
you know.
It's it's hard to decide which one's all ultimately weirder.
But yeah, yeah, that was really great there. Yeah, great supporting cast in this movie, like you mentioned. Yeah, everybody all around does a great job there with this. Yeah, I wish you did spend a little bit more time on the war sequences. I think that would have been good if you did that, fleshed that a little bit more, like something like Wonder Woman did. I think they did a better job with that. Really feeling the brutality of World War I. I think you really felt that when she visits the actual cities impacted by it and the people and seeing that. I wish you saw a little bit of that in this to really get that sense of that, with it. And yeah, the callbacks to this also. I mean, I guess this is why the callbacks really work. Of like, we can, I can do this all day, or the dancing moment of that moment, because you really did like the beginning stages of the MCU and where it kind of led to with Endgame, and then after Endgame, people were like, "Well, damn, y'all still going?" I mean, I thought this was Endgame. I thought y'all wrapped this up, and y'all
It's in
still
the
going.
name.
Yeah, y'all still going, huh? Okay, I guess. But yeah, I mean, that's why it was kind of so special. You had a lot of those moments there for characters like Iron Man and Thor and Captain America and all these people like that. So that's kind of really special for this. So yeah, I mean, I would give it a strong peak there. I like it a lot more than what I remembered there, from when I last remember watching it. So I think there was that. Yeah, very, very strong movie, with this. So, and you also give it a peak as well, for Captain America: First Avenger. Okay, yeah. So 2 peaks for Captain America: First Avenger there.